Hello everyone and welcome to Prehistory, a Traveler's Guide. We're your hosts, Dakota, Greg, and Scott. And tonight we're going to be talking about the Middle Jurassic predator known as Afrovenator. We're going to start our notes off here. The dimensions of this animal is 29.5 feet long or 9 meters in length. It was a megalosaurid theropod dinosaur. Most analysis placed Afrovenator within the Megalosauridae, which was formerly a wastebasket family, which contained many large and hard-to-classify theropods, but since has been redefined in a meaningful way as a sister taxon to the family of Spinosauridae within Megalosauridae. It was a bipedal predator with 3 claws on each hand. It was not a huge variation between the different genres of large theropods during the late Jurassic, but Afrovenator is noted for having a particularly long humerus, which would have given the arms of Afrovenator more reach. Reconstructions show that Afrovenator was also a lightweight hunter built more for speed. Another dinosaur from the same formation as Afrovenator is the sauropod Jobaria, and while direct evidence is lacking, it's not impossible that Afrovenator may have hunted these sauropods, particularly smaller juveniles that would have been easier for a predator Afrovenator size to handle. Its habitat lived in the Middle Jurassic period in northern Africa. The Taro was originally thought to represent the Hatturian to Bavarian stages of the early Cretaceous period, approximately 136 to 125 million years ago. However, reinterpretation of the sediments have shown that these are probably mid-Jurassic in age, dating to Afrovenator to the Bathonian to Oxfordian stages between 164 to 161 million years ago. The discovery of Afrovenator was a short description of both genus and species found in a 1994 paper which appeared in the prestigious science journal Science. The primary author was well-known American paleontologist Paul Sereno, with Jeffrey Wilson, Hans Larsen, Didier Duffelin, and Hans-Dieter Suess as co-authors. Afrovenator is known from a single relatively complete skeleton, holotype UCOBA1, featuring the most of the skull minus its top. Likewise, the mandible or lower jaws are lacking apart from the pre-articulate bones. Parts of the spinal column, partial forelimbs, a partial pelvis, parts of the hind limbs. This skeleton is now housed at the University of Chicago. And there's nothing significant about this dinosaur in popular media. So the notes for this one was pretty short. And so now we'll just go ahead and jump into the Paleo News segment.
Paleo News. Farmers stumble across mammoth fossils. Farmers from Michigan accidentally dug up a skeleton of a mammoth in their soybean field last Monday. By Thursday, 15 paleontologists had jumped onto the scene and discovered the mammoth was likely to have been hunted, butchered into prehistoric steaks, and stored by humans somewhere between 10,000 and 15,000 years ago. Farmer James Bristol and his friend were digging in his field to make way for a natural gas pipeline when suddenly they struck something. Speaking to Ann Arbor, Bristol said, quote, "We thought it was a bent fence post. On further inspection, it turned out to be a 2-foot rib bone, or 60 centimeters. After alerting the University of Michigan to their find, a team headed by the institution's Professor Dan Fisher made their way to the site and began excavating. A remarkable discovery. Fisher told Detroit Free Press that it was, quote, "one of the more complete sets of woolly mammoth bones ever to be found in the state." Although Michigan is no stranger to finding these kind of things, there remains around 300 mastodon and 30 mammoths have been found in the Midwestern state to date. Fisher also stated that the beast was unlikely to be a woolly mammoth, but actually a hybrid between a woolly mammoth and Columbian mammoth, an even larger species in its hairy cousin, capable of growing up to 13 feet. Source, iflscience.com.
Next in the Paleo News, newly discovered mammals survived the KPG extinction event. Scientists have discovered a species of ancient mammal that survived the event that led to the extinction of dinosaurs and other large reptilian megafauna. The remains of this large rodent-like creature give clues about how mammals took over when dinosaurs died out. Kimbentopsilus samansae, as the newly discovered species has been named, was a plant-eating creature that resembled a beaver. The news is published in the Zoological Journal of the Linnean Society. Dr. Sean Bussart from the University of Edinburgh, lead researcher on the study, explained how a student on his team called Carissa Raymond found the fossil while prospecting at a site in New Mexico, United States. "We realized pretty quickly that this was a totally new type of mammal that no one has seen before," he told the BBC News. The researchers have noticed in particular the animal's teeth, which were specialized for plant chewing, with complicated rows of cusps at the back and incisors in the front for gnawing. They named the species after Kimboto Wash, the area in the New Mexican Badlands where it was found. This group of now extinct mammals, collectively known as multituberculates, originated alongside the dinosaurs during the Jurassic period and thrived for more than 100 million years until they were apparently superseded by rodents. During the Jurassic, these animals were all pretty small, said Dr. Bassert. When the asteroid hit and wiped out the dinosaurs, and suddenly, in geological terms, this group of animals started to proliferate and got bigger. That's how the rise of mammals started, and really the result of what is us being here today. The scientists say that mammals made it through the extinction event. Source: BBC/News/Science.
Rigmaspis zipioidea, new species of dullest fish uncovered in China. The fish, named Rigmaspis zipioidea, belongs to an extinct group of jawless marine and freshwater fishes called galeaspids, characterized by their big and bizarre head shields. The species swam in Devonian period seas about 410 million years ago, long before dinosaurs lived on Earth, according to a study published in the journal Vertebrata Paleasiatica. It had a torpedo-shaped head shield with a mouth hole on top and a sword-like nose. The complete fish would have been 2 to 2.8 inches or 5 to 7 centimeters long when it was alive. Dr. Ji-Kun Gai of the Institute of Vertebrate Paleontology and Paleoanthropology in Beijing and co-authors made the discovery in rocks of the Hosong-Chang Formation in Yunnan Province, China. The fossil specimens of Rigmaspis zipioidea that the paleontologists used to characterize this new genus and species came from multiple individuals and included complete head shields and one incomplete endocast of a skull. Source: Chinese.com/paleontology.
20-million-year-old flea could contain the ancestor of the Black Plague. A single flea, approximately 20 million years ago, managed to get itself trapped in amber, preserving with it several examples of bacteria. Although the bacteria cannot be extracted from the amber and subjected to genetic testing to confirm its evolutionary link to modern-day Y. pestis, the researchers led by Edmonton...
You'd have to look at it through a microscope.
Yeah. Led by Edmontologist Dr. George Poignard Jr., noticed several similarities. Firstly, the bacteria were attached to the proboscis, feeding organ, and rectum of the flea, two areas the contemporary equivalent is often found. Secondly, their physical characteristics, including their size and shape, closely resembled that of the modern Y. pestis. Lastly, they are both the same type of bacteria, Conticobacillus. If it turns out the bacteria are indeed ancestral to the contemporary bubonic plague, then remarkably this would mean that they predate the emergence of Homo sapiens, our own species, by at least 19 million years. Although the strain of bacteria infecting modern humans would have only evolved around 20,000 years ago, so far, more ancient strains of the pathogen could have evolved to exist within other animals, including rodents. The creatures originally thought that brought the Black Plague to the shores of Europe in the 14th century. Source: iflscience.com. And that's a bonus story for you. So, for our movie section of a pop culture section, we're going to talk about our favorite movies because movie news has been lacking as of late. And so we'll start off with Scott's favorite movie. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, thinking of prehistoric movies, there are three that just stand out for me, especially. Is Ray Harryhausen's 1 Million Years BC, and its sequel, When Dinosaurs Rule the Earth, and Quest for Fire.
I've seen all three of those. And why do you like these movies so much out of all of them?
Well, I mean, the stop motion effects are just incredible. You know, I'm willing, now that I actually know something about paleontology, I'm willing to forget the dinosaurs and man together and some of the dinosaurs being in the wrong geological periods and all that, you know?
Yeah.
But the effects were just fantastic. And Quest for Fire is actually, I think, pretty accurate. And they did a really, really good job of fixing up real animals to look like mammoths and saber-toothed tigers.
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't this about where two tribes of early humans were trying to find fire and whatnot?
Well, there's a tribe of, I guess they're Cro-Magnons?
Mm-hmm.
Or Neanderthals. I think they're Neanderthals. Anyway, they get attacked by, I guess, Homo erectus or some more primitive Bigfoot-like hominids, and their fire is lost. So they don't know how to actually make fire from scratch. They're dependent on fire being, from lightning or found like that. So they have to go out looking for it. 3 of them go out looking for it,
Right.
hoping to blunder up on somewhere. And eventually they blunder up on, I guess, what would probably be a Cro-Magnon tribe that are more advanced, that know how to make fire. And they learn how to make fire from them, and one of the Cro-Magnon women falls in love with a Neanderthal man and comes back with him, and she knows how to do it herself, so she makes the fire for him.
Right.
And the arc of the movie is all the adventures and struggles they have to go through to do all that. And they encounter saber-toothed tigers, woolly mammoths, wolves, I think.
So basically, all the Pleistocene megafauna that people commonly think about.
Yeah, I think, if I remember right, it's set like, I don't know, 80,000 BC? Somewhere between 80,000 and 40,000. I think it's 80,000.
That sounds about right.
80,000.
Yeah. Really good movie, though.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, isn't Tommy Chong's daughter playing the female role?
Yes, and Ron Perlman's in it.
Uh-huh.
And the other guy is, I can't think of his name, but he played the werewolf in Silver Bullet, the Stephen King movie.
I can't remember, but I know who you're talking about.
He's a really good actor.
The actor's name was Everett McGill.
Everett McGill, there you go, yeah. They're all made up with the brows and everything, so they're almost unrecognizable with makeup on.
Right. All right, then. Thanks for sharing with us, Scott. And Greg, it's your turn.
That's one of a tough one, considering the sheer volume of dinosaur films I have seen growing up. But if I had to start off with my first favorite movie, it would have to definitely be the original Jurassic Park for 1993. Just for sentimental reasons, for nostalgia, or for whatever reason. It was one of the very first movies I saw as a kid when it opened in 1993. So for that's why I'm putting Jurassic Park in my favorite movies list.
Okay.
That's for my number 2. Trying to think back to the stop motion era of dinosaur films. I would probably have to go with one of my all-time favorite ones, The Valley of Gwangi by Ray Harryhausen. I mean, who doesn't love dinosaurs in the Old West? And basically a dinosaurian King Kong, more or less, in terms of story structure and tropes.
It's a classic.
True to that. I guess now it's my turn. I would say Jurassic Park, but I'm not going to go into it because since you've already mentioned it, Greg. And I will go into one of my favorites, which would be kind of surprising. It's called The Clan of the Cave Bear. I can't remember who did the film, but it's basically about this Neanderthal tribe that adopted a Homo sapien into their ranks, a young girl, because she lost her family to an earthquake. And essentially it shows how she's trying to fit in with this group of Neanderthals. She proves to be more intelligent than they are because she knows better mathematics such as multiplying, which confuses some of the elders of that Neanderthal tribe. And it's a pretty graphic movie in terms of some violence, as well as, unfortunately, the lead female is forced to mate with one of the stronger Neanderthal males. But it's just like Quest for Fire in terms of how realistic it looks, and like I said, a lot of the actors and actresses you couldn't recognize with all that makeup and prosthesis and all that. And another movie that I really enjoy is from the silent era. It is the first film rendition of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World. The stop motion was done by Willis O'Brien. This is basically a prototype for King Kong that would come later on, after his work off of The Ghosts of Slumber Mountain, I think. And I just really like how active the dinosaurs were in that film, because this was during the time where people thought of dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals as being slow, dumb, cold-blooded, just giant lizards. But in this film, you actually see the dinosaurs just moving like actual animals. They're fighting, they're eating, they're not portrayed as monsters, even though they're frightening, but it's the first attempt of where they are shown as living animals. And I think Willis O'Brien got a lot of direction from Charles R. Knight, the famous paleo artist. You can definitely see his influence through the Stegosaurus in the film.
You look at Charles Knight's old paintings, and the animals just look alive. It was fantastic.
I mean, granted, nowadays they're a little inaccurate, but for that time, I would say they're the most accurate paintings for the time. And not to mention, I mean, they were active animals. He understood that.
In volunteer work at the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences, I actually got to see a T-Rex sculpture he did. It was fantastic.
I bet that would... I can't explain how envious I am right now about that. Of course, jokingly, of course, but that is incredible, Scott, that you got to see.
A really cool story about Knight is that when he first arrived in Philadelphia, he went and spoke to Edward Cope not too long before Cope died, and Cope gave him a lot of notes and information that I'm sure was a big help to him.
Oh, yeah.
This was months before Cope died.
I believe in the painting called Leaping Lapids showing Diroptosaurus, as it's called today. Shows like one of these tyrannosaurs laying on its back and the other one leaping on the air about ready to attack it. And we're thinking animals about the size of elephants. And I think that was one of the paintings that Cope helped guide him to paint.
They talk about that in the Bone Wars documentary that was on PBS.
Yeah, I've seen that documentary. It was a very informative. So, anyways, so to give everyone a rundown of our favorite movies, Scott says 1 million years BC and its sequel, When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, and Quest for Fire. Greg's is Jurassic Park and The Valley of Gwangi. And mine personally would be the Clan of the Cave Bear and the original The Lost World from 1925. Go for it.
Okay, folks, we got for you tonight a horror story by great horror author of decent renown, almost comparable to Stephen King, William Scholl. The book title is called Saurian. The black plot summary reads this. It appeared mysteriously at night and destroyed the town with amazing swiftness. Houses were flattened. The bodies of men, women, and children were crushed and mangled. Hundreds were missing, vanished without a trace. No one knew what happened or why. Years later, the sole survivor of the Holocaust, Tom Bartlett, began to suffer blinding visions. Visions of a huge creature unparalleled in size, intelligence, and evil. He was frightened, but something was calling him back to the ruins of his old boyhood home. He was the only man alive who had even guessed at the creature's existence, and he knew he must find it or struck again. What he didn't know was that while he was searching for the beast, it was searching for him. Okay, here there's some information about it in the Prehistoric Monsters book. I'll read passages from this book that describes more. Scholl's Saurian is a splendid illustrated example of a non-Japanese daikaiju, stemming from literature, not cinema. Fossils of an immense dinosaur named Gargantosaurus lead a manic-depressive paleontologist to a remarkable conclusion. This cryptogenus is alive, causing recent disasters along the eastern American coastline. The animal is 250 feet long, 80 feet at the shoulder, resembling both Harryhausen's beast as well as fellow Dinosaurus stop-motion monster, the Paleosaurus, from the giant behemoth. In various passages, its head is described as 10% human and 90% reptilian, with an awful face which has a, quote, semi-human, semi-reptilian continent that leered and chuckled and grinned with its lipless mouth like a devil. This surviving Gargantosaur retains a strange power, a werewolf-like shape-shifting ability. It is a remnant of a mysterious, intelligent alien race abandoned on Earth hundreds of millions of years ago. The aliens whose original body forms and culture have been lost to history and science, metamorphosed into dominant forms of life that then existing on Earth at the time, which were the dinosaurs. Certain aliens refused to give up their tremendously powerful physiques. These became the dragons, sea monsters, and scaly serpents of legend. One of these has evolved into a human Gargantosaur hybrid named Bronmor, an evil person who has infiltrated ranks of society, and is the book's main antagonist. After transforming into this dino monster paleosauric persona, Bronmor's item quenches horrific thirst for bloody human flesh. Amusingly, we learn through Bronmor's racial memory flashbacks that, quote, if modern man only knew which of his favorite dinosaurs had actually been created by the aliens, he would amaze. Furthermore, Real dinosaurs, both genuine forms and both individually alien morphs, such as Gargantosaurs, were extirpated by radiation from a nearby supernova. This cosmic event also generally extinguished the aliens' shape-shifting genetic capabilities. Saurian is a spectacularly nightmarishly monster, which in its full reptilian form resembles both the Radosaurus from Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and the Paleosaurus. However, the Saurian beast is also insistent with human qualities. In fact, such a transformation merging of dinosaur with man into one dino-human is a historical term one encounters in fantastic literature, as documented in the previously featured Dinosaurs in Fantastic Fiction by Alan Davis. Soren brilliantly illustrates this theme. Shell's beast, as he refers to it, is far vaster than the sum of its evil and the reptiloid morphology. First, the giant monsters try to majestically aspect themselves with his crushing, godlike qualities. Books that you can compare this to, you could compare this with Stephen King's It, for they share a somewhat similar plot line with terrible disaster happening in childhood, youth being lost, and then when the character goes into adulthood, the repressed memories of the incident come back, and then they remember that what they thought did happen in childhood actually did happen. So we got a bit of comparison with Stephen King here. And with Pennywise the Clown. Though unlike with that clown, this monster does not screw around and gives no mercy to its victims or anything, but it's not mindless. Far from it. In short, if you like giant monsters, like horror stories, this book will give you plenty of that in spades. My overall rating for Saurian is a 4.5 out of 5.
Alright, thanks, Greg. In our next section of our pop culture section will be the video game section. And we're happy to announce that Mesozoica has hit its 50K goal and a little over, mind you, and begins funding. They also revealed a new dinosaur to celebrate this, the Stegosaur Kentrosaurus. They've also revealed a new raptor by the codename The Dragon during a recent live stream. So hopefully there'll be more of this animal in the future. And that concludes the game news and our popular culture section.
Okay, our prehistoric fauna of the week is Euparkeria. Dimensions, 60 centimeters long. Classification, an extinct genus of Archosauriform. They used to call these animals thecodonts. I think that's kind of outdated now, though.
Yeah, it was an unnatural grouping.
Yeah. Paleobiology. Euparkeria had hind limbs that were slightly longer than its forelimbs, which has been taken as evidence that it may have been able to rear up on its hind legs as a facultative biped. Although Euparkeria is close to the ancestry of fully bipedal archosaurs, such as early dinosaurs, it probably developed bipedalism independently. Euparkeria was not as well adapted to bipedal life. Normal movement was probably more analogous to a crocodile high walking. Euparkeria was close to the ancestry of Archosauria, the group that includes dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and modern birds and crocodilians. Some specimens of Euparkeria preserve bony rings in the eye sockets called sclerotic rings, which in life would have supported the eye. The sclerotic ring of Euparkeria is most similar to those of modern birds and reptiles that are nocturnal, suggesting that Euparkeria may have had a lifestyle adapted to low light conditions. Habitat lived between 245 to 230 million years ago, Middle Triassic in South Africa. During the early Triassic, the Karoo Basin was about 65 degrees south latitude, meaning that Euparkeria would have experienced long periods of darkness in winter months.
Alrighty, first time doing one of these Paleobits segments. In the BBC documentary Walking with Monsters, a carnivorous prairie species of Mesothelae was shown as being as large as human head, showed hunting reptiles the size of today's cats. In the series, it is depicted as living like tarantulas and burrows, and either lying wait for its prey or chasing it through the jungle. In fact, no spider that large has ever been found. At the time the series began production, the sea scorpion Megarachne had been mistakenly interpreted as a spider. The correct classification was not made until Walking with Monsters was well into production, and the giant spiders were then called Mesothelae instead of Megarachne. Megarachne cervinae had, up until this time, been considered the largest known spider. Alright, it is time for the matchup of the night. Time for Prehistoric Match Up, and it's a battle of the tanks of the prehistoric world. Doedicurus, the Glyptodont, versus Edodontosaurus / Euoplocephalus, the armored member of the Ankylosaur family from the Cretaceous period. And to introduce the dinosaur we have Dakota covering that.
All right.
You're on.
Thank you, Greg. And tonight's dinosaur is Anodontosaurus. It should be noted that this genus is sometimes considered to be a junior synonym of Euoplocephalus. Its dimensions was 6 meters long, or 20 feet, weighed around 2 metric tons, or 2.2 U.S. tons, and it was about 2.5 meters tall, or no, wide, sorry about that, or 7.9 feet long. It's a classification, it is an ankylosaurid dinosaur within the subfamily of Ankylosaurinae. Paleobiology. Like other ankylosaurs, it had a very broad and flat, low-slung torso, about 4 feet high and positioned on 4 short legs. The armor consisted of osteoderms, skin ossifications not part of the main skeleton. The tail club of ankylosaurids has often been interpreted as a defensive weapon. In Euoplocephalus and Edontosaurus, the presence of ossified tendons only with the distal half of the tail may support such a function. And a 2009 study concluded that large ankylosaurian tail clubs could generate sufficient force to break bone during impacts, while small and average-sized ones could not. Its habitat, it is known from the entire span of the late Cretaceous Horseshoe Canyon Formation, from the mid-late Cambrian to the middle Maastrichtian stage, about 7.28 to 67 million years ago in southern Alberta, Canada. Alright, Scott, go ahead and give us about the Gilptodont.
Our second contestant is Doedicurus. Dimensions: height of 1.5 meters or 4.9 feet. Length of around 4 meters. Doedicurus could reach a mass of 1,910 to 2,370 kilograms. Classification: a Glyptodont. Paleobiology. It had a huge dome carapace that was made of many tightly fitted scutes, somewhat similar to its modern-day relative, the armadillos. This was the largest known glyptodontid and one of the better-known members of the New World Plastodon. Its tail was surrounded by a flexible sheath of bone that had long spikes or knobs at the end, at least in male individuals. Doedicurus clavicaudatus inhabited woodlands and grasslands and was herbivorous. Its tail club was probably used in intraspecific conflict rather than defense against predators like Smilodon, unlike the superficially similar club of the ankylosaurs. In addition, carapaces have been found which show fractures that were produced by roughly the same amount of energy as could be produced by the tail muscles. Habitat. Lived during the Pleistocene until the end of the last glacial period, some 11,000 years ago. Fossils of Doedicurus clavicaudatus are found in North America and South America, especially the Ensenada Formation in Argentina. Given the late date of its appearance, it was encountered and probably also hunted by the first human settlers of South America.
All right, then. So, what do y'all guys think?
Well, looking at the ankylosaur, they're talking about the difference between the ankylosaur and the glyptodont, that it was likely that the ankylosaur regularly used its tail as a defensive weapon, whereas the glyptodont didn't. Kind of gives an advantage to the ankylosaur. On the other hand, the glyptodont has those spikes on the end of its tail, which might be able to theoretically do more damage if used the right way than the club on the end of the ankylosaurus. So I don't know. It's hard to call. I think the ankylosaur was a little bit bigger and heavier too.
Slightly. I would say the ankylosaur is also more maneuverable, seeing that it could pivot its hips and its front end as well. A little bit better than the Gilptodon.
Looks like it's got longer legs. It doesn't sit as low to the ground as the Glyptodon.
So that but both of these animals are pretty slow moving comparatively, say, to other species. So it would definitely be a very slow fight. And like you, Scott, I do think that the spiked tail on the Gilptodon would give it a little bit of an advantage, especially if it could hit the underside of the ankylosaur, where it's less armored and more vulnerable.
Or hit it in the head or the eye or something.
Yeah, well, the eyelids were armored in Gilptodons, but in the ankylosaurs. Sorry, but then again, that all you need is one good pike, and then that armored slab in the eyelid could easily take out the eye. Which brings up another point. Ankylosaurs and Gilptodonts share very limited eyesight, but the ankylosaurs had a better sense of smell, so its eyesight wasn't necessarily its primary mode of sensing predators or detection. However, I don't know if the ankylosaur's tail club could penetrate the armor of the Gilptodont. I think it's debatable whether or not it could. No doubt that it could shatter bone. However, given that the armor is a bit different composition than that to the ankylosaur, it makes you wonder if it could be able to actually penetrate the armor by cracking it, much like taking a baseball bat to a windshield, or if it will just bounce off.
I think if I got to really come down to it, though, I'm going to go with the ankylosaur.
Okay.
But it could go either way.
What do you think, Greg?
This is truly one of those really hard fights to pick out here. On the one hand, you have a mammal that can't really aim its tail to hit a precise target, but it probably has better defensive coverage. On the other hand, you have another the dinosaur here that actually has the ability to aim its tail in a more precision manner, but at the same time has a bit more vulnerable underside. It's going to come down to who can actually damage the other and where they can inflict damage. I'm personally thinking of a stalemate here, but probably leaning towards the ankylosaur 7 times out of 10. And if the Glyptodon is actually able to hit a vital spot, maybe a 5 out of 10 for the Glyptodon to take a win. So, this is really a 50-50 split.
I would agree with that assessment, but like Scott, I'm going to lean more towards the ankylosaur, mainly because it has the mobility. It's a little bit more mobile than the Gilptodont. As soon as it could get around the Gilptodont a lot quicker than the Gilptodont could pivot to match it. So, and
one more thing, ankylosaurs actually are more used to having to fight other predators than the Glyptodont would. So there were only a few predators that could even kill the Glyptodon, and saber-toothed cats were not one of them.
I would think humans would be the biggest threat to Gilptodonts, while ankylosaurs had to take on tyrannosaurs and dromaeosaurs on a constant basis.
I wonder if they were attacked by terror birds. Probably were.
It could be possible, but I do not...
They were long extinct by the time Predictors evolved.
Yeah, but it could have took on their ancestors. It's an interesting hypothesis, but...
I thought there was still some in South America that late. Maybe I'm wrong.
They were on their way out by that time. I don't know if they were completely extinct by that point, or they just had remnants of their groups, so it's hard to say. I'll do further research into it. But to all of our...
I've got one more thing to say.
Oh, okay,
one thing that could definitely kill a Glyptodon, we actually have evidence for this, were the prehistoric jaguars. The jaguars have pretty much the strongest bites of any cat species living or extinct. They regularly prey on armored reptiles, both prehistoric and extinct. And I do believe that there have been some Glyptodon fossils, skulls, that have been found with bite marks that correspond with prehistoric jaguars. Specifically due to how jaguars kill their prey, which is completely different from all other cats. They bite through the skull of the prey between the ears to deliver a fatal bite to the brain. And that would be a weak spot on a Glyptodon that could be exploited by a cat like, say, a jaguar.
And for an ankylosaur in this fight, if it could manage to take its club and hit it right upside the head, that would probably give it a lethal concussion.
Probably.
But once again, it's a question of how fast can they move around one another to get the killing blow. So overall, it's either the ankylosaur will win by a slim margin or it will be a stalemate. But anyways, to all of our viewers, tell us what you think by commenting our videos in the comment section, or message us on our Facebook page or our DeviantArt page and tell us who do you think would win in this fight. And as for that, This is Prehistory, a Traveler's Guide, and we're your hosts, Dakota, Scott, and Greg. Thank you for joining us tonight, and please pledge support to our Patreon at patreon.com. All right, good night, everyone.